I don't have a beret, but I'll have to use a
I am literally shocked that you do not own a beret.
I don't I don't think I have ever owned.
Jeremy, Joe doesn't. If you had to choose one friend that you knew owned a beret, who would it be?
Probably Joe for sure.
He doesn't own a beret. I'm literally shocked.
Does
I
Joe
don't
not
think
own a beret?
I don't think I have ever owned a beret.
You have a Viking outfit, but no beret.
Yeah. Hi everyone, welcome to Parallel Drives. I'm Joe DeLude II, and
And I'm James Vincent. Oh,
damn it, we never get this right.
okay.
Okay. Hi everyone, welcome to Parallel Drives. I'm Joe DeLude II, and I am here with my best friend,
James Vincent.
and we are here to talk to you about friendships and our friendship in relation to those friendships.
Yeah.
So
This-
this week, I'm going to hand it over to James. He has picked the friends for this.
Yeah, I picked the friends. But I was going to say before I even said that, we just posted last week and so many people messaged me and were like, I really loved just listening to you guys talk.
Yeah, I heard the same thing. And people would message me and I was like, yeah, I felt like it was a bit long. And they were like, no.
Yeah, I was like, we could talk or not talk for hours. We both like soup.
And peas.
So I chose the friends for this week. And I kind of set the theme for the cocktail. But I thought tonight we could explore the amazing friendship between Mary Richards and Rhoda Morgenstern from the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Yes. I'm very excited about this one.
Oh, I thought you were going to be like, no.
No,
But
changed my mind. Let's talk about someone else.
no. But I also thought that kind of set us up for a 70s drink.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. So I'm doing my version of the grasshopper.
Yes. And I'm doing a pink lady because most of the 70s drinks have dairy in them, which I cannot do. So I decided I would do something. So this one has egg white, which makes it foamy.
Oh, well, mine is, I only had clear creme de menthe and creme de cacao. So mine was clear, and then I added in cashew milk because they also didn't have dairy. And then I put in a little bit of green food coloring to kind of get a fun, zesty kind of 70s gal, single gal living in, out there in the world, pursuing my career kind of color.
Yep, it totally is. Both of them are. They're very much girl
Cheers.
tricks. Yes, cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. But I was a little concerned because I, without remembering, Googled like Mary Tyler Moore, 7 cocktails, and it was, she was an alcoholic, and so she did not drink. Mary Tyler Moore, the actress.
Right.
Not Mary Richards, the character, but
like the brandy.
we're gonna still play with the 70s kind of cocktail thing. So I thought I know you know about the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and I know that you and I all the time I say that I am the Rhoda to your Mary, and so I thought this was a great one to kind of pursue. The Mary Tyler Moore Show is such an important piece of television and pop culture history because it was groundbreaking, not only in the way that it portrayed a working woman and a career woman, but because it really showed a fully formed female character for the first time who really wasn't a mother or a housewife. And while there were a few people on TV who had careers, this really also looked at her friendships. It looked at her love life. It looked at things that were happening outside of just the newsroom. So it was really groundbreaking. And so while I was researching, the other thing that I thought was really exciting, it was one of the first shows to have so many female writers. And it's the first time that a woman won an Emmy for writing for the show, and I wrote her name down. but I can't find it. But it was the first time, it was in 1974 was the first time. And there had been so many women writing in comedy, but they had never really been recognized. And so it was important with this show that they brought in the comedy aspects, but also really grounded it in realism. So it was about love and celebration, but also ambition. You know, a woman had never been able to have ambition on TV and pursue a career. And just the fact that Mary left her hometown to pursue a career and celebrated it, you know, that iconic moment where she's throwing the hat up in the air, kind of celebrating her freedom, is so iconic. So I did a deep dive into the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and then I also wanted to look at the friendship of Mary and Rhoda. And I don't know if you remember, but in the first episode, they actually have a fight.
Yes.
They are actually like, yeah, in the first episode, they are both trying to live in the same apartment. And so Mary comes in to take the apartment, and Rhoda is in there cleaning the windows and stuff. And towards the end of the episode, Rhoda says, I know I can't hate you either.
You know what? What? In spite of everything, you're really a pretty hard person to dislike.
I know what you mean. I'm having a hard time hating you, too. We'll both have to work on it.
And it just kind of starts this very realistic, very refreshing friendship and relationship where they talk about so many things. And for me, as a women's studies minor, I think it was so iconic because when we look at female friendships in shows, so much what they talk about revolves around men and how they look for men and how they present themselves for men. And with the Mary Tyler Moore Show, they talked about everything from like love and relationships, but also about like bicycles and the weather. And they just had a very real kind of intimate, warm friendship that was very iconic in television. And so iconic that Time magazine voted it as one of the most important television friendships of all time.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was really cool, I don't know if you want to just jump in or you want me to just keep going with my research.
I think also something of note is to know what a pioneer that Mary Tyler Moore was in television. So when she was on the Dick Van Dyke Show, she made a point of wearing pants, and which at the time was not done. Women always wore dresses, and they did the producer said and the network said they didn't like the way that it hugged her butt basically, and that it showed too much. And she refused to back down, and to the point where she started wearing pants most of the time. So she was able to get it in, and then she was able to keep it in, which I think is really great. And so then to go into doing another groundbreaking show, I think was, she was setting the stage, to be able to do this.
And the show in its time won 29 Emmy Awards and influenced icons like Jane Pauley and Oprah Winfrey. Oprah tells a story where she actually interviewed for a TV spot in Minneapolis because she was so inspired by the character of Mary Richards.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was so cool is that Mary Tyler Moore won 3 Emmys for the show. Valerie Harper won 3 Emmys for the show. And the portrayal of Rhoda was also, for me, I really connected more to Rhoda. I think the idea of that, like, funny ethnic best friend who struggles with her weight and kind of had that artistic flair, I really always connected to that. But even with the Valerie Harper character, she really brought to Rhoda Morgenstern this very realistic way of leaving your home behind, pursuing your own dreams, like kind of finding yourself and going out there and pursuing a creative career. And I think that really, for me growing up, watching this in reruns, because we were chilled, like I wasn't even born when the show started.
Yeah, I think it started in 1970, so it was a year before I was born.
But watching it in reruns and kind of seeing her embracing her ethnicity and then going on to Rhoda and like making a huge move again and pursuing love in the Big Apple and like leaving Minneapolis and heading back, New York, this is your last chance. It was like, so, I don't know, it just really hit me hard. And I kind of knew that there was something about this character, just her accent and her ability to just be herself, that really spoke to me. And I put down some notes about that because I think that what a lot of people don't realize is that all of the women on the show were written to kind of be fully developed characters. So Cloris Leachman as Phyllis, Betty White as Sue Ann, Georgia as Georgette, and they all were brought to bring in different things for Mary to play off of. But what people are saying when they're looking back at the show is the relationship between Rhoda and Mary was so special because it didn't have to have constant moments all the time. Like Rhoda could come over in her bathrobe and slippers, and it could just be a scene of the two of them sitting down eating. And that's what really spoke to people. It was pushing forward this idea of women being able to live full and satisfying lives and have relationships that were full and satisfying. And I think it hit people. It struck a nerve. Rhoda, when she was in her own series, her wedding was at the time the highest rated television show ever. The only episode of the 70s, sorry, and the only one that had beat it ever was the birth of little Ricky on I Love Lucy. And she held that, she holds those numbers. I know Roots came in and changed it, and there have been big TV shows and more people have televisions now, but it is still the number of people that watch that wedding episode, it still holds records. I don't know, I just thought it was such a great friendship, and it launched so many careers and so many shows and so many iconic moments in pop culture. And so I thought that was a great friendship to talk about this week, the friendship of Mary Richards and Rhoda Morgenstern.
Well, you know, and I think that it was very specific for that time because I have been watching Mrs. America, which is about the ERA movement. And a lot of the people involved in the ERA movement. Obviously, some of it is fictional just for storytelling, but a lot of it is based on, you know, true stories. And obviously a lot of the people that were involved in it, like Gloria Steinem and, oh God, I'm blanking out on everybody's names now. But, you know, and I think that was one of the things that at the time was also really great because these women were fighting to have equal rights and being fought against. You know, and people wanting them to stay at home. There was a quote that I found that Rhoda said in one of the episodes. It says, "Boy, Mary, you know something? You got a real Ms. job. This is the kind of job Gloria Steinem wants you to have."
I love it.
I thought that was really interesting, but also Gloria Steinem had criticized Mary Tyler Moore for not being as feminist as she could be in the show.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think that, yes, there is a way you can go far, but also remember what television was like back then. You know, it wasn't like it is now. So, you know, you had to be very careful about the steps that you took, you know, and this was groundbreaking and pushing rules and pushing boundaries as it was, and to push them even further and stronger, you know, that could have been detrimental. And I think a lot of, like, especially Norman Lear shows in the 70s did that. They pushed boundaries. Like you had Maude. So was there an abortion in Maude? Yeah, so like you had these shows that were pushing little by little as much as they can. And I think what made Mary Tyler Moore such a great show was that it could appeal to a large mass of people.
Well, and I think that's what Mary Tyler Moore was trying to do, was to get a message to as many people as possible. And I think that, because I also was reading about the whole thing about Gloria Steinem, and a lot of the second wave and third wave feminists view it very differently, because the third wave feminists kind of saw Mary Tyler Moore as groundbreaking as a person as well, where the second wave feminists, a lot of them felt like she wasn't doing enough. But what the goal was to get women in the writing room, in the production room. You know, Mary Tyler Moore produced this. She created a whole production company where she could put other projects forward. And I think that her thought process with all of the things she always aligned with in what I was reading was that she wanted to make things as easy as possible. You know, if if you go back to the Petrie, pants wearing thing on the Dick Van Dyke Show, if she had fought it and kind of been loud about it, it would never have passed and let her wear one pair of pants. And then she just kind of slipped it in to be able to push things forward. And I think that's how she felt with Mary Tyler Moore, by introducing characters who were all of what a woman could be, and by also including episodes like Chuckles the Clown.
And what did Chuckles ask in return? Not much. In his own words, a little song, a little seltzer down your throat.
Where you're dealing with emotions and things that have nothing to do, with feminism, but really are pushing television forward. This was a medium that people were really starting to look to for social commentary, but also for social cues. And I think that that's why it's such an important moment.
It did deal with things like divorce, and also women in the workplace.
Yeah.
And I watched a couple of the first episodes just to sort of refresh myself, because I haven't watched it in such a long time. And it's really interesting when she first walks in there, she's going for a secretarial job. And Lou Grant invites her into his office and says, no, I'll come into my office, and goes into the office and then says, I could use a drink. Could you use a drink? And that's where she orders a brandy Alexander. But I was like, could you imagine, like, in this day and age, going in for an interview and your would-be boss being like, hey, I feel like a drink. Do you want to have a drink? Like, it would be such a strange thing. But at that time, it reflected how society was and how she gets the job, and there's nothing for her to do. Like, she gets this associate producer job, and all she's doing is sharpening pencils over and over and over again because she has nothing to do. And then it starts to get in, and he starts to give her things to do, and she starts to have to help with the new show. But yeah, it was really cool to watch it, and really interesting to watch their dynamic, and especially see it change, because it changes drastically in the first two episodes. Because the first one, Rhoda's outside in the winter cleaning the windows, and they open up the curtains. Phyllis opens up the curtains, and there she is cleaning the windows, and Phyllis closes the curtains. It's like, but also interesting to just juxtapose Phyllis with them, who was like a totally different character, who was just as important, I think, as the other ladies, but maybe not on as much, but in a totally different way, a different woman of the time. And I think that's what you were saying before about how there were all these different women in the show, and they all represented different types of women.
And just the relationship with Phyllis, that kind of frenemy relationship, that kind of antagonistic relationship that Phyllis and Rhoda always had, but then showing the warmth of the relationship that Rhoda had with Phyllis's daughter, Beth. The Sue Ann Niven's character, who's this happy homemaker, on the surface, the perfect woman, and then nymphomaniac, pursuing the sexuality parts of things, and then like bumbling Ted with a wife who has that soft spoken kind of ditzy blonde character that we've seen again and again, that trope in TV and film, but really is such a heart in the show. And I think that's why it's so successful. It really allowed people to connect to different characters in a different way. And I think for me, it just resonated so much, because I think when you're growing up gay, and Jeremy and I kind of talk about this all the time, I think especially at our age, maybe, where there were not gay people on television when we were young, but it started when we were in college, we started to see more gay people.
We had was Billy Crystal on soap.
Billy Crystal, but I was like 5, it wasn't anything that resonated with me. But seeing talk shows and seeing club kids and drag queens on talk shows, and then seeing Roseanne and seeing like Sandra Bernhard and all of these people kind of come out, and the advent of MTV, where you could kind of see queer lifestyles and things like that. I think Mary Tyler Moore, even though it wasn't a gay character, the idea of this kind of flamboyant, arty character in Rhoda, who had to leave her own home to find herself, really always spoke to me, because I think as a gay kid, a lot of people grow up knowing that no matter how much you love where you are, you probably, you might have to leave to figure yourself out.
Yeah. In one of the books that I've read, I can't remember which one it is. I don't think it's Velvet Rage, but it's in one of them where it says that even if your family loves you, there is always this sort of distance because they love you, but they are scared for you. So there can't be this total unconditional love because they're scared of what is going to happen to you. So there's always this sort of apprehensiveness to it.
Yeah.
And and I think seeing whether it's a man or a woman, and obviously gay men tend to be attracted more to these iconic female characters, because I think they see a lot in them, and we see a lot in them that we aspire to. Like, could imagine, like, I love that apartment. I'm not sure I could sleep on a pull-out couch, but like that was an amazing apartment. And to think like, well, one day maybe I could be in an apartment like that, and maybe I could move to a city, because I always knew that I wasn't going to stay in Rhode Island. I really wanted to go to New York, but was too afraid to go to New York. So I took steps before that to get there. But like that was the dream of like going there and living there and making it and going out and, being part of that community.
Yeah. I think it is funny sometimes, especially as we get older, where I look back at certain things and I think, God, I did live that life. We were at these parties, we were at these clubs, we have worked with these people. And I think that there's something about that as you age where it's kind of like, wow, I did have those moments, and maybe I don't need them as much anymore. Maybe that New York doesn't exist, or that place doesn't exist now, because everything is out there. I was thinking the other day about like even how different we found music. Like we would go to a record store and search through
Yeah.
albums to find something that was interesting, or maybe you met somebody and they made you a mixtape and there was something on there that you were excited about, and so then you had to go to a record store and kind of find it. And I think there was something really cool about finding these little moments and then piecing them together to create and kind of find yourself. Like every person I dated when I was young introduced me to new movies, new music, new ways of thinking. And that's kind of cool to look back on and realize that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that, and I think it was for me, and we talked about this in the last podcast about how I was so self-conscious, and so it was for me, it was going to New York. Like that was really like my opening, and where like I was going out, where I could really be me, wearing makeup to go out to a bar, just to a bar, not even to a club, and just hanging out and doing my hair in a big pompadour and, wearing these really cool clothes and living in the East Village. And so that was such a great experience for me. And it was like living that life, living that sort of almost bohemian life that you did see in Mary Tyler Moore and Rhoda, that even though they were professional in their careers, they sort of had there was always this little bit of bohemia to them and this little bit of relaxed nature to them that is something that was always really appealing to me, and then to just move somewhere and then become best friends with your upstairs neighbor, and just hang out all the time has always been something that I love.
You do love that. I think there's also something kind of punk rock about it. It's like, here are these women breaking the rules, doing their own thing, on their own terms, kind of navigating it and having to deal with the sexism, deal with the, the wage gap, the gender gap, deal with, living in a tiny apartment and figuring out how to make it work and to get that better position, and then going out to this, living this bohemian life, drinking your, Brandy Alexanders or your uh, grasshoppers. And
Yeah.
there's just something about it that to me still has a very romantic uh, quality to it. And I think that I always, in art, in literature, in music, still very much look to those kind of bohemian characters for influence, those anti-names, those, over the top characters who are living their life on their own terms. Because I think for me, while I do live my life pretty out loud and I look the way I look, um, I do think sometimes there are those voices from your childhood
Mm-hmm.
that you still hear sometimes. Like Jeremy will be like, "Oh, we're going here," and I'll say like, "Oh, can I wear jeans?" And he'll be like, "I don't give a fuck what you wear whatever you want to wear." But I just think about like when I was little and my mother would be like,
Oh yeah.
you can't wear jeans to this place, or like, it's just I don't know. I think those socializations that you grow up with, you carry with you. And we grew up in a place where presentation and what other people thought of you and thought of your family and the perception of that was very strong. We have mothers who are very concerned about people knowing their business. And I think that, so then when you see a Mary or a Rhoda who, especially Rhoda, who was living her life out loud and did have a mother who was like super ethnic, super opinionated, super involved. Like Nancy Walker is just also that really iconic character who just, was unapologetically Jewish and unapologetically involved in her children's lives. And in the Rhoda show, Julie Kavner, as Bren, it was like Brenda Morgenstern, it's like,
Yep.
they weren't typical beauties. They weren't typical successful people. They didn't look like, I think the 70s in general in television and film showed us people who were not perfect or polished. I think we got the Reaganomics in the 80s, and all of a sudden everyone had perfect teeth and skin and all of that. But
makeup and very big hair and shoulder pads, but yeah.
But there is something about there's a comfort level.
Yeah.
With the Mary and Rhoda friendship and all of the people in that world.
Yeah. Yeah. So also just as a note that both of them, both Mary Tyler Moore and Valerie Harper, were huge proponents for the LGBTQ plus community. I had the pleasure of speaking with Valerie Harper on the phone.
I remember that.
Yeah, we were doing a benefit for marriage equality in California when I was living in San Francisco. And we were trying to get performers to come, and she couldn't come, unfortunately, but she did say she would do a video for us. So we sent a crew to her that was local to where she was living, and they recorded it, and we had a wonderful conversation. And it was the strangest thing to call this number and think that I'm calling like her representative or her agent or somebody, and then it's just her picking up the phone and being like, hello. So and I think that's also important, and it's interesting the when you have that, like these are all these icons that we have always looked up to and that we see as examples of how we want to live our lives, and then to see them also support who we are, I think is very important. And it does, I mean, it's rare when one of your icons does not support. So such an interesting relationship between these characters that you aspire to be and that influence you when you're younger, and then they are the ones supporting you now that you're older. And I really like say that. And Valerie had a great quote that said, you know what, darling, we're all going to die, every single one of us. So if you can kind of cut that out of your mind, when it comes, it comes. But for now, I'm alive and I'll do whatever I can do. Why not just do it? And I thought that was such a great quote. And she said that while she was while she was sick and suffering from a lot of different things. And it's such a great mantra to live by, and sort of reflective of who her character was in the show as well. That she did do what she wanted to, and she did forge ahead, and she was true to herself, and then in her show, it was such a big thing for her to get married in that episode. And then in the next season, I think it's the next season or the 2 seasons after that, she ends up divorcing him, which shows real life, which shows what people were going through. And, I think that's the main point that we've been saying, is like they showed the country and people themselves.
And I think just like it was television that wasn't very real in so many ways, but the real moments I think were why people connected. Like when she has to move back in with her parents, and kind of is dealing with all of those things, and then going through falling in love, finding that I don't know if you remember the wedding moments, where Phyllis kind of invites herself to the wedding, and like Lou and Ted and Maury kind of come out on their own and to surprise her. And then Phyllis decides she's coming, and she keeps asking what she can do. And so Phyllis's job is to pick up Rhoda at Brenda's place in Manhattan and drive her to the mother's house in the Bronx where the wedding is. And because she's so self-centered, she forgets to pick her up. And so Rhoda ends up like taking the subway, running through the streets of New York in
the wedding dress.
In the wedding dress. And I think that was just such a like wow moment, and so then to have the divorce happen and all of those things, I think America really felt that. And as someone whose parents got divorced when I was a teenager, and so many of my friends come from divorced homes, like it was a new thing. Like I try and explain to Jeremy and like other people of his age, like when I was in grammar school, especially at a Catholic school, if someone had divorced parents, people would be like, their parents are divorced.
Yeah, that was a huge thing.
Yeah, and I think that seeing real life and seeing, I was reading a quote somewhere about how it's not always just falling in love that makes you who you are. It's falling out of love and going through the breakups and the divorces. And I think that seeing that divorce on TV and loving a character like Rhoda so much, and then watching her kind of go through it, I think, I'm a very dramatic person. I am histrionic. So like going through breakups and stuff, you think about those moments in TV and film, dealing with your best friend, you think about those, or I think about those moments in TV and film. And that this show and this friendship really impacted me. I still, even last week, I was saying, can I wear bandanas? I don't know.
And someone did say, yes, you can, as long as it's black and blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I would love to bring up, and you may not want to talk about this, but I think it would be cool to talk about it, is because you've always said that you were the Rhoda to my Mary. But, when you think about it, when I thought about it, and, I haven't watched the show in a very long time, it always sort of made sense to me that you would say that, because that's what I had envisioned in my mind, because it was the Mary Tyler Moore show, she was the star. But then when I started doing the research on this and watched some of the episodes, she was just as important and just as beautiful, and just as interesting. So I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, but
well, I think, part of it is a reference to that Romy and Michelle, scene where they're fighting over who's the Rhoda and who's the Mary.
Yeah.
But I think that, I always connected to Rhoda a little more because she did. I mean, it's crazy to look at what size she was and think about the fact that she struggled with her weight and all of those things. But I think there always have been those moments in our friendship, even now, where I'll run into someone we haven't seen for 20 years and they'll say like, have you seen Joe? Oh, he's so beautiful. Like, you always exuded a confidence and, a self-awareness that I don't think that I had, moments where you would be walking down the street and somebody would be like, you should model for this, or, um, just, I don't know, I guess, like, if I'm honest, I think that I did have resentment. We've talked about it. I had resentment with you for a little while because I feel like I'm always having to work at 100% and prove to people constantly that I'm able to do something. And it's not always enough. And I think that, especially in this industry where, my first agency had me on diet pills, and we would go out to gay bars, and like, my look is a thing now, but it wasn't when we were growing up. And I think that while I didn't resent the fact that people were attracted to you and wanted to be with you, and while you can back up, that initial reaction with your talent, I do think there was a moment in my life where I was like, I am working so hard and people can't ever see past the visual. And I think that was kind of how Rhoda kind of put herself out there in that way, but at the same time, I think that I am much more like Mary, where I'm much more neurotic and I'm much more, high strung with certain things. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's just an easy, it's an easy comparison to say that I'm like Rhoda because there are those moments that I really connected to with her character.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would see that more, and I think that we're also different people than we used to be back then.
Yeah.
So, I think saying it before was sort of like what you were talking about, feeling that little bit of resentment, and having to work so hard. Whereas now it's become sort of like this joke, like everybody gets that reference when you say it.
Yeah.
So I think it's an easy reference, but I thought it'd be important to bring up to people. And we talked a little bit about this last week too, about how I never felt that confident. And I was always, but I'm good at portraying something, and to be able to put on this facade of feeling confident when I really wasn't, never felt attractive. Always felt like I looked a little weird and off. And so going through that, a lot of times thinking back on this, where your perception was that it was like easier for me at times.
Yeah.
I was struggling so much because I was so self-conscious, and it was so hard for me to be that. Like, I never wanted to be the center of attention. I never wanted, anybody to have attention to me. Like, if I had to speak in front of a large group, I would turn beet red for no reason. I'm talking about something I know about, but it would still make me so nervous. And there are times now that I still, depending on the group that I'm in or the place that I'm at, where I will still have that. But yeah, and I always saw you as, especially like once you started your career, once you started in MAC, and seeing all the things that you were doing, and then when you went into the powder group and you started your own makeup line, and I was just amazed, and I still am amazed. Like, I watch at the makeup show, and I watch, we've known each other for years, so we can be there and not have to be and talk, only to each other. And it's incredible to see the amount of respect and admiration that people have for you. And it's something that I always saw in you. So it's nice that this recognition is coming to you, because that's something that I could always see in you, and never knew why you were so hard on yourself all the time.
Well, and I think at this age too, and I appreciate that so much, but I think at this age too, we can look back and say the voices in your head, not everybody knows what your internal dialogue is, but externally you're putting something else forward. And I think we both did that. But what I love about our friendship is, even where we've had those moments where we might be competing against each other, in certain things in an industry, not necessarily us, but you're competing against your best friends as makeup artists sometimes. Yeah. And I love the fact that we have always supported each other in whatever path or interest or person or, whatever it is that we're doing at the time, who we're dating at the time, what the project is, we've always been supportive and celebrated and shared that. We never let our own internal voices or insecurities affect the other one, and get in the way. Like I always, anything that I'm on, I want you there. Any project that I'm doing, I want you there. Anything that you're doing, I want to share it and celebrate it and see what I can do to help. And I think we've always been that way.
Yeah.
And I think that is something about friendship that is so essential, and not everybody has it. Not everybody knows they need it. And I feel so lucky because I can bring you into any situation, professional, family, work, karaoke, whatever it is. I can introduce you and bring you into a completely new group of people, new experience. And I know that you are going to always be there to make me look and feel better. And I hope that I do the same for you. And I think not everybody has that type of, friendship. So I think that's I'm very lucky.
Yeah. And it is very similar to their friendship that they had in the show. Like that's what they were for each other, and they both had successful careers. One in a newsroom, and Rhoda was did windows for a department store. She was like the display manager, and they both had very successful careers and supported each other in it and supported each other in their lives and whatever they were choosing to do at the time.
And I think, like we said earlier, they could both turn the world on with their smile. They could both take a nothing day and suddenly make it all seem worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
But it's you, Joe, and you should know it.
If only I had a hat right now.
But if you are someone who has an extra beret or loves berets, please send Joe a beret to the address.
Beret's not for me. Like a jaunty cap, yes, but a beret, no.
I love any jaunty. I just love the word jaunty. I think I used it earlier about a scarf. I think I said a jaunty scarf.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to add to our podcast is at the end, to talk about a moment of joy that you had this week. Something that people can take away with. So it can either be a moment of joy where we can talk about that, or it can be something that really brought you joy. So like a book that you're reading, or a movie or a TV show that you saw, or maybe a makeup that you saw, or someone online that you watched live, whatever. But I thought it'd be nice.
Beret bring you joy.
Yeah, a moment of joy. You bring me joy.
You bring me
joy. Over what I just sang, because that's not.
You want me to give my moment, or are you going to give yours?
I will give my moment.
Okay.
So the thing that's been bringing me joy that I just binge watched was the big flower fight on Netflix.
Oh, I want to watch that.
I don't enjoy the judge that much, although he does have some really great moments. But it is hosted by Natasha Dimitri. I'm going to get this wrong, so let me get it right. Natasha Dimitriou, who is on What We Do in the Shadows.
I'm obsessed with her.
She's fantastic. She talks like she's in the show. She'll be like, "Now, my little darlings, go out and get some corn while the judges make their choices."
I'm going to watch it.
But it's like the Great British Baking Show, but this one has Americans and Brits competing.
And I heard there's an Irish team.
There's an Irish team. These two contractors. There's this super cute gay couple, boyfriends who are both artists and don't really know plants at all, but they're like amazing artists.
A plant? I thought men like him were usually called a fruit.
I just watched that the other night too, and I hadn't watched that in a long time, but that was like 2 weeks ago. So yeah, the big flower fight on Netflix, you can binge watch the whole thing. It's really amazing. They do some incredible things with like plants and flowers, and you just look at it and you're like, I'm having enough trouble just keeping my plants alive in my living room. and I'm here all the time, so you think it would be easier, but yeah, it will, as it says.
Okay, it's on the list.
Yeah, as it says in a review, the big flower fight on Netflix will soothe your weary soul.
I need to see. My soul is weary. It is like Netflix knew it. My moment is a little different. I had a social distance friend moment last weekend where we went to our friend Johnny Lupiani, who is an amazing chef here in New York, does a burger kind of thing. And so we got burgers and stood on the sidewalk and social distance and ate them. And then we went to a park, and it was a group of like makeup artists and friends, and we were all like 6 feet apart. And then at the end, one of my friends who I haven't seen since March was like, went to go, and like absent-mindedly, without thinking, I hugged him, and we were both in masks and all of that. But he started crying because he hadn't been hugged or touched in so many weeks. And I think for me, I'm in quarantine with my husband, so I'm not dealing with that weight of loneliness I think that so many of my friends are dealing with. And it just was so nice to like hug a friend and feel that connection. And so it just really brought me joy to know that, like, even in the I'm getting choked up. I detest weepy women. Even in my, even in those moments where we are struggling right now, just to know that our friends are there and those connections are so powerful. And I just can't wait to hug everybody. I'm like a hugger. I'm like a big bear hugger.
Me too.
And like that was such a beautiful, joyous moment for me. And I got to hang out with friends and eat banana bread and pull cards and sit in the park. And those for a New Yorker to have outdoor moments, and it just was really special.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that day as well, because I do live alone and I haven't seen anybody. I've been really, like, a lot of my friends will go up the street to the park and do walks, but I just don't want to be outside in a park and have to wear a mask. Like, that sort of defeats the whole purpose of being there, is breathing in the oxygen that I need. Like, I can go sit out on my porch if I need to, and I have trees right outside, so I can go sit there. The whole point is walking through the park and being able to breathe in the air and get that energy from it. But
if you're 6 feet from other people, you can pull your mask down and then just pull it up when you approach other people.
Which I have done. Well, I have a Judy Garland mask one of my friends made for me out of this fabric from Judy Garland from Wizard of Oz. She made it for me. Otherwise, I'd just be wearing a bandana.
Is it her face, or does it?
It's like her singing. I guess it's from Over the Rainbow. But it's like a repeated. So you have like this sort of cloudy background, and then you have her sort of like.
Oh, it's not like a mask of Judy Garland's face.
That would be even better.
Yes, I've heard how hard it is to work with Judy Garland. You know how hard it is to be Judy Garland? And on that note,
perfect. Your grasshopper's gone. I'll finish off my pink lady. And we will see you here next week for the next Parallel Lives. Thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you guys for joining us. Have a great week and find those moments of joy. Throw on a beret.
Have a pink lady. And then throw the beret up in the air when you're done.
Mary, you're the best friend I ever had. I don't know what I would have done without you.
I'm going to miss you so much. I mean, you just don't know. I'm really going to miss you.